The Draugr Plague, Fjord of Hands. Season 1, Episode 8. The oars entered black water, and the silence came with them. Behind them, the homeland was smoke on ice. Freya stood near the bow of the second boat with one boot braced against a cracked rib and one hand around a rope that had been knotted too many times. Her other hand held the shoulder of a boy whose arm was wrapped in cloth stiff with old blood. She did not look back. She looked at the ice ahead, at the teeth of it, at the places where black water opened and shut. Her face had the stillness she wore when feeling would make her late. The boats were too heavy. Everyone knew it. No one wanted to be the mouth that said it first. The lead boat sat low enough that each broken ridge scraped along the side with a hungry sound. Another boat dragged at the stern because its patch had swollen in the cold, and water seeped through the seam in slow, dark beads. The smallest skiff rode behind them, tied by two poor ropes, and a third strip torn from a sleeping hide. It carried sacks of meal, a cooking pot with a split lid, wrapped tools, spare wool, a child's cradle with no child in it, and a chest no one had confessed to loading. Ulfric saw all of it. He stood in the lead boat, knees bent to the motion, one hand on the gunwale. A leader could pretend many things for the sake of morale. He could pretend the wind was changing. He could pretend the wounded would last until a better shore. He could pretend the children were quiet from obedience instead of exhaustion. He could not pretend a boat rode high when water was licking its rim. "Keep the blades shallow," he said. The words went from boat to boat in murmurs. Shallow blades, soft strokes, do not wake the ice. No one laughed at that. The ice already sounded awake. It groaned under them. The sound came first from ahead, far and low, like a door being forced open beneath a hill. Then it spread sideways. Thin ice flexed around the hulls and spoke in long cracks. Children lifted their heads. A wounded man who had been biting a strip of leather to keep from crying out stopped biting. The rowers lost the rhythm for a breath, and the lead boat drifted crooked between two plates. "Hold," Ulfric said. The oars lifted. Silence returned, but it had changed. It was no longer the silence after fire. It was the silence of something listening from underneath. Astrid sat near the middle of the lead boat, the empty salt bowl wrapped in her shawl. Her burned eyes were turned toward the water, though the cloth across them made that impossible in ordinary ways. Her hand rested on the bowl's rim. Freya had wanted the last salt guarded by someone with a blade. Astrid had asked for the empty bowl instead. "What do you hear?" Ulfric asked her quietly. "Nothing that wants to bless us." "That is not an answer. It is the answer we have earned." He let the words pass. He had no room in his chest for anger that did not pull an oar. The ice groaned again. This time the sound came from under the boats. A girl in the second boat made a small choking noise. Freya turned her head sharply, and the girl pressed both hands over her own mouth. The wounded boy under Freya's grip whispered for his mother. Freya's fingers tightened, not cruelly, but hard enough to anchor him in the world. "Eyes forward," she said. "Hands inside." The order spread faster than Ulfric's. Hands inside, children between knees, wounded low, no one lean over. The smoke thinned for a moment. Morning opened enough to show the fjord around them. It was not a road. It was a broken skin. Black water ran between flows in crooked lines. Some flows were thick, blue, white, strong enough to hold a man. Others were thin enough that the dark beneath showed through them. They bowed and lifted as the boats passed. Frost feathered their edges. In places, old snow had drifted over weakness and made it look like ground. Then something moved beneath one of the thin places. At first, Leif thought it was a seal. The shape passed under the white film and vanished into black. Then another moved beside it. Longer, slower, too close to the boats. A third shape turned below the ice with a pale face that was not a face long enough to be named one. A child whimpered. Ulfric raised his hand. Row. The blades dipped. The first strokes were careful. The ice answered with complaint. The boat slid forward, scraping, bumping, catching at the edges. The poor ropes between them drew tight. The laden skiff jerked and swung, its bundles shifting with dull thuds. A sack of meal rolled against the side. Someone in the last boat cursed it, as if a word could make grain lighter. A shape followed the sack's movement beneath the ice. Freya saw it, her jaw set. "Cut nothing yet," Ulfric called back. "I know when to cut," she said. The answer was not defiance. It was warning. He heard it and accepted the wound in it. The rowers pulled again. The oars dipped and rose. Water ran from the blades in silver threads. The carved marks near Leif's hands darkened with wet. Roof, wave, flame, path. He pressed his thumb into the path mark until the edge bit skin. Below the lead boat, the water changed color. It should have been black. Instead, it clouded pale. Shapes gathered under the keel, keeping pace not with the boat, but with the rowers. When the left side pulled, something below slid left. When the right side pulled, something below drifted right. The dead were learning the rhythm, or remembering it from life. Men who had once rowed to fishing grounds, women who had pulled ferry lines, children who had trailed hands from summer boats before winter took every summer name away. Astrid whispered, "Do not give them your longing." "Louder," Ulfric said. "If they hear it, they will take hold of it." "That does not help the oars." "No," she said. "It helps the living know what is being hunted." The bow struck ice. The boat shuddered. A wounded woman cried out. Freya leaned forward from the second boat and jammed a pole against the floe, pushing it aside with a grunt. The poor rope between boats strained. Fibers snapped like little bones. "Again," Ulfric said. The rowers pulled. The flotilla moved. For several breaths it seemed enough. The boats found a narrow channel where black water opened between ice plates. The smoke behind them blurred. The burned village became shape, then shadow, then a darker scar under a grey sky. The children lowered their heads again. The wounded breathed in shallow jerks. The rowers found the smallest possible rhythm, not strong, not brave, only shared. Then a pale hand slid under the ice beneath the lead boat. It did not strike, it did not claw. It matched the rhythm of the oars. When the blades dipped, the hand moved. When the blades rose, the hand rose beneath the thin white skin, palm upward, fingers spread, following them through the fjord as if the dead had found the road under the living. The flotilla kept moving because stopping had become a way to die. "Do not look down," Freya said. The children looked down. The wounded looked down. Even the rowers, who needed their eyes on oars and ice, lowered their gaze because fear pulls the head the way weight pulls rope. Beneath the ice, pale shapes turned. A woman near the stern of Freya's boat began to pray under her breath. She had prayed through the burning of the longhouse with her mouth closed. Now words escaped her in broken pieces. She held a small girl between her knees, wrapping the child in both arms and pressing the child's face against her belly so she could not see. The girl did not fight. That made it worse. Children who were not fighting had already spent too much strength. "Name?" Freya asked without turning. The woman blinked at her. "What?" The child. "Name. Marta." "Marta," Freya said, still watching the ice. "Keep your hands on the bench. Keep your head against wool. Breathe when I breathe." A crack ran under the boat. It flashed white, then black. The hull lurched as one side slid along a floe. A man lost his grip on a bundle. It tumbled toward the gunwale. Freya stamped it down before it went over. "Leave bundles tied," she said. "It has tools," the man said. "Then the tools can learn patience." A shout came from the last boat. Freya turned. For a moment, smoke, mist, and the shifting boats made the sound impossible to place. Then she saw the small shape at the side of the rear boat, half lifted from the bench, one arm stretched outward. A boy, thin-faced, no older than a lambing child. His body was still in the boat, but something had the line tied around his waist. The rope had been meant for safety. Someone had tied it before departure, a desperate kindness in a morning full of broken ice. Children had been lashed by loose loops to benches or adults so they would not slide under a rail. The rope around the boy had once tied a bed frame. Its knots were clumsy but strong. It ran now over the side of the boat and down into the black water where it jerked in slow pulls. "Hold him!" Freya shouted. Hands grabbed the boy. He screamed then, not from pain at first, but from seeing what held the other end. The ice beside the last boat cleared in a dark oval. A face rose under the water. "Mother!" the boy cried. The word cut through every boat. The dead woman pulled. The boy's body slammed against the side of the boat. His chest hit wood. His hands clawed at the gunwale. The people holding him shouted all at once. The boat tipped toward the hole in the ice. "Rowers hold," Ulfric called. "Do not hold," Freya shouted back. "Keep them from turning." She was already moving. There was no clean path between boats. The second boat bucked under her as rowers tried to steady it. The channel narrowed. Floes ground against the hulls. Poor rope stretched between boats like a question that would snap if answered wrong. Freya stepped onto the gunwale, caught the line between her boat and the last, and went hand over hand with one boot finding the edge of a floating ice plate. The plate dipped under her weight. Cold water surged over her boot. A hand moved beneath the ice toward her ankle. She drove the butt of her spear through the thin crust. The hand recoiled, not because pain had changed its mind, but because the strike had broken its grip on the world for a breath. Freya used that breath. She threw herself toward the last boat and caught the sternpost. Hands seized her coat and hauled. "Knife," she said. No one gave it quickly enough. She took her own from her belt. The boy screamed again. The dead woman's face pressed closer beneath the water. Her eyes were open. They did not burn with gold. They did not shine with vengeance. They were clouded, fixed, full of the terrible simplicity of one attachment left after death had taken all else. She was not reaching for meat. She was reaching for her child. That made the horror worse. A man beside the boy sobbed, "It is his mother. She fell when we launched. We thought the ice took her under." "She is taking him now," Freya said. The man grabbed Freya's wrist. "Wait." Freya looked at him. He let go. Freya dropped to her knees beside the boy, his hands locked around the rope at his waist. He had wrapped fingers into the knot, as if he could hold both sides of the world together by refusing to open his fist. "Look at me," Freya said. He looked at the water. She struck him across the face. The sound shocked the boat silent. His head turned. His eyes found hers, wild and full of betrayal. "Look at me," she said again. "My mother," he gasped. "I know." She came back. No. Something came back wearing the part that cannot let go. "She is cold." "So are you, if I fail." He shook his head. The rope pulled. His body bent backward over the side. Freya hooked one arm around his chest and drove her knee into the bench to brace them both. The people around her grabbed his legs, his coat, his belt. The dead woman pulled again. The rope cut into the boy's waist. "Please," he whispered. Freya set her knife against the fibers. He understood then. "No, I will not let love drown you," she said. The boy screamed for his mother. Freya cut. The first stroke bit through outer fibers. The rope jerked, dragging the blade sideways. She pressed harder. The second stroke opened the twist. The third parted it. The cut end snapped from the boy's waist and whipped over the side. For an instant, the dead woman's hand rose above the black water, still holding the rope. Her fingers were pale, swollen, and rigid with cold. The other hand pressed under the ice, palm upward. Her mouth opened. No sound came. The rope slid through her grip, or her grip sank with it. The water closed. The boy lunged after her. Freya caught him with both arms. He fought so hard she nearly lost him. He bit her sleeve. He beat at her chest with fists that had no strength and all the grief in the world. She held him down against the wet boards while the boat rocked and the people stared as if she had killed a holy thing. "Row," she said. No one moved. Freya lifted her head. Blood ran from the scratch on her cheek and darkened along her jaw. "Row, or I cut every rope in this boat and let the dead choose for us." The oars moved. The rear boat lurched forward. The others answered. Ulfric's voice carried through the channel, low and hard, ordering the lead boat to pull. The flotilla strained away from the hole in the ice. Soren sobbed under Freya's arms until his breath broke into little animal sounds. "I want her," he said. "I know. You cut her away. I cut you free." He tried to hate her. His face showed the attempt. Then the cold took the effort from him and left only shaking. Freya pulled him against her cloak and held him there, not softly, not like a mother, but like a shield pressed over a wound until bleeding slowed. The man who had begged her to wait stared at the water. She knew him. Freya wiped blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. So did the rope. Astrid's voice came from the lead boat, thin across the water. "Do not call to what has gone below." Behind the rear boat, the cut rope vanished under the ice. Freya held Soren back as it went. He reached for it once, fingers spread, then curled his hand into her cloak instead. Beneath the frozen skin, something pale turned with the rope and sank into the black, taking with it a mother's shape, a child's cry, and one more bond the living had survived by severing. Ahead, Ulfric watched the skiff. It rode behind the last boat, low with cargo and colder than a grave lid. It had seemed necessary at dawn. It had carried what people swore the living could not do without, meal enough for days if stretched with water, a spare sail patched with cloth from the longhouse sleeping benches, coils of poor rope, wedges for boat repair, a cracked iron cauldron, wool, tools, fishing hooks, 2 lengths of pitch, dark timber saved from an old shed, a bundle of carved household things no one admitted belonged to them, and a chest bound with rawhide. The skiff jerked backward. The last boat jerked with it. The line between them snapped tight. The rear boat's stern dipped. Water slapped over the side. People shouted and scrambled forward. Soren screamed because all sudden pulling had become his mother's hand. "Cut the tow," Freya shouted. "Not yet," Ulfric called. He hated the words as soon as they left him. Not because they were wrong, but because they sounded like greed if heard from the wrong wound. The skiff jerked again. This time the movement did not come from ice. It came from below. Pale fingers climbed the outer planks. One hand hooked the rawhide around the chest. Another clamped around the split lip of the cauldron. Another rose at the stern and closed around a coil of rope, dragging it half over the side. The skiff swung crosswise in the channel. The poor towline moaned. "Ulfric," Astrid said, "I see it." "No," she said, "you see the load. Listen to the want." He looked at her sharply. Her burned eyes stayed turned toward the water. "I do not need a riddle." "Then do not ask one. The dead are not pulling only wood." He looked again. The skiff held more than supplies. He had known that, and he had not known it enough. A child's cradle lay wedged between sacks. A widow's weaving frame had been tied beneath the spare sail. Someone had hidden 3 carved door pegs inside a bundle of wool. A cracked bowl with a blue rim, a loom weight, a little wooden horse, a wedding belt, the iron hinge from a smokehouse door, the longhouse's broken ladle, wrapped knives whose owners were dead, a plank carved with names from a sleeping shelf. The living had obeyed his order badly and perfectly. They had left stone and chests when watched, then smuggled smaller houses into the skiff. Attachment had become cargo. Cargo had become an anchor. Ulfric made the calculation. He did not make it like a hero. He made it like a butcher who knew the animal's eye was looking at him. He counted the low hulls, the children hidden between knees, the wounded who could not swim, the poor ropes, the remaining channel, the shapes under ice, the distance to any shore. He counted the meal in the skiff and the hunger that would come if it sank. He counted the repair wood and the cracked boats. He counted the memories hidden under sailcloth and the anger that would turn on him if he gave the order. "Cut the skiff loose," he said. The words did not travel. They fell. The nearest rowers stared at him. Leif's hand stopped on the carved oar. Astrid lowered her chin. In the rear boat, Freya looked up from Soren. Ulfric raised his voice. "Cut the skiff loose." "No," someone shouted. "The food is there." "The spare sail," another cried. "My tools. My mother's bowl. Everything is in it." "Not everything," Ulfric said. "Everything dies if it stays tied." The line between the last boat and the skiff strained again. A hand surfaced with rope twisted between frozen fingers. Another gripped the skiff's bow and pulled down. The skiff sank lower. Water spilled over its side and darkened sacks of meal. The chest shifted. The cradle floated free, then caught under the spare sail. Freya pushed Soren into the arms of the praying woman and stood. "I will cut it," she said. "No," Ulfric said. She looked across the boats. He knew what she saw. She saw his habit of making others perform the cruelty his command required. She saw him almost doing it again. "I gave the order," he said. "I will spend my hand on it." At the stern, the towline ran over a wooden cleat someone had carved long ago with small waves. The rope was wet, swollen, and dark with river grime. Beyond it, the skiff lurched under its load. Hands gripped both sides. More hands pressed under the thin ice around it, waiting for anything that fell. The owner of the blue-rimmed bowl seized Ulfric's sleeve. "It is all I have of her." Ulfric looked at the woman. He knew her. He knew too many names and not enough ways to save them. Her wife had died before the hoard was broken. The bowl had been carried through 3 winters without a chip until that morning. "If I leave it tied, it will be what takes you to her," he said. She struck him. Her palm hit his cheek hard enough to turn his head. No one moved. He did not punish her. He did not even raise his hand to the mark. "Hold the boat steady," he said. He took the knife from his belt. The dead pulled. The rope jumped in the cleat and burned against wood. Ulfric set the blade to it. For a moment, he saw not rope, but every tie he had ordered cut since dawn. Hearthstone from hands, longhouse from village, gold from greed, Mother from child, now food from hunger, tools from repair, memory from survival. He saw his brother's burial in a flash he had not invited. Gold laid beside a body because honor had demanded weight, because pride had needed shine, because grief had hidden greed under a holy cloth. He cut. The rope did not part at once. He soared through wet fibers while the boat pitched beneath him. The woman with the bowl cursed him. A boy begged for the carved horse. Someone behind him whispered that winter would eat them now. Someone else whispered that winter already had. The last strand snapped. The skiff swung away. It did not sink immediately. That was the cruelty. It turned slowly in the black channel, heavy with supplies, memory, and weight. The spare sail loosened and flapped once, a dead wing in the grey light. The cradle bobbed free and filled. The blue-rimmed bowl rolled against the side, struck wood, and broke. Sacks of meal darkened as water climbed them. Hands clung everywhere. Pale fingers dragged the gunwales lower. The chest tipped, slid, and vanished. The skiff turned from the flotilla as if choosing another road. "Row," Ulfric said. The people did not move. Freya seized an oar and drove it into a man's hands. "Row." Leif's voice carried from the lead boat. "Pull, or his cruelty is wasted." That moved them. Not because it was kind, because it was true. The boats pulled. The sudden loss of the skiff's drag threw them forward. The rear boat rose higher by a hand's breadth. The towline end whipped across the water and sank. Hands that had gripped it closed on nothing. The channel ahead opened thinly between ice plates. Ulfric stayed at the stern, watching until the skiff went down. No one thanked Ulfric. He would have despised them if they had. The surviving boats pulled free, lighter and poorer. Behind them, bubbles rose under the ice. Beneath those bubbles, pale hands drifted with the sinking skiff, still clutching what the living had loved too much to carry and too much to release. The channel narrowed. Ice pressed close on both sides, forcing the boats into a crooked line. The lead boat scraped right. The second scraped left. The rear boat bumped the broken stern of the one ahead, and a wounded man cried out as the jolt struck his bandaged leg. Children ducked as oar handles swung too near their faces. The rowers had lost the rhythm. That was how the dead found them again. Hands rose where strokes fell unevenly. A blade dipped too deep, and fingers closed around it. A rower shouted and tried to wrench the oar free. The boat slewed. The next rower struck ice instead of water. A woman in the second boat pulled before the man across from her, and the hull turned broadside toward a flow thin enough to break under a dog. The rear boat slowed, then lurched. "Together!" Ulfric called. The command struck panic and broke on it. Everyone tried to obey at once. That made it worse. Oars tangled. The left side pulled while the right side lifted. A man cursed another for catching his blade. The other cursed back that his hands were numb. A child cried that something had touched the bottom. A wounded woman begged to be set ashore, though there was no shore, only ice and black lanes. Leif felt the rhythm die. The carved oar shook in his hands. Roof, wave, flame, path. He had cut those marks to carry memory, not to keep time, yet the wood now asked for work. All story did, if it wished to matter. A tale that only remembered the dead while the living drowned was vanity with a pretty mouth. Leif put his blade in the water and listened. Not to the dead, not to Astrid's hidden hearing, to the rowers. He struck the oarlock with his palm. Wood cracked against wood. No one heard it. He struck again, harder. Ulfric turned. Freya looked up from the rear boat. Astrid tilted her head. Leif began with the oldest thing he had left. "Roof to smoke," he sang. His voice came out rough, not large enough for the fjord. "Roof to smoke," he sang louder. "Hands to oar." The nearest rower looked at him as if he had gone mad. Leaf pulled. "Flame behind," he sang. "Path before." The line was simple enough to be held by shaking mouths. It was not a boast. It did not promise a bright shore. It did not call gods who had stayed silent. It gave the arms a place to move. He pulled again. Roof to smoke, hands to oar. This time the woman across from him matched the stroke. "Flame behind," Leaf sang, "path before." Ulfric understood and put his blade in. The lead boat answered first, raggedly, then with more shape. The second boat followed a breath later. The rear boat dragged, caught, and joined. Leaf did not count with numbers. He counted with loss. Roof to smoke. The blades entered. Hands to oar. The blades pulled. Flame behind. The blades lifted. Path before. The blades reached. The rhythm spread. Hands rose beneath the ice, but the boats no longer offered them confusion. The oars entered together and left together. A hand grabbed a blade and was dragged backward, unable to twist the whole boat alone. Another hooked the gunwale, and Freya brought her spear down hard on its wrist. The pale fingers broke their hold and vanished. A third hand rose near the rope between boats. Ulfric cut the trailing loose end before it could wind around a wrist or cleat. "Roof to smoke," Leaf sang. His throat hurt. "Hands to oar." A memory broke through the line. The longhouse roof in winter, smoke threading through the roof hole, children asleep in piles of wool, someone laughing over spilled ale, the smell of fish, wet dogs, old ash, and men lying about hunts. He nearly lost the next words. Flame behind. His voice cracked. The crack ran through the boats like another fracture in the ice. For a breath, the rowers faltered. Leaf saw it in their shoulders. If he stopped, the song would become grief, and grief would become drift. He struck the oarlock with his palm until pain flashed. "Path before," he forced out. The rowers pulled. Freya's voice joined from the rear boat, low and hard. "Roof to smoke." She did not sing beautifully. She sang like someone driving a wedge into frozen wood. Others answered. "Hands to oar." Ulfric's voice came next, hoarse and almost buried by wind. "Flame behind." Children caught the last line because it was the only one that sounded like going somewhere. "Path before." The flotilla found itself in the chant. Leaf changed nothing. A frightened singer often reached for new words to prove he still had power. Leaf had no power to spare. He kept the lines plain. He kept them in the mouth. He kept them on the stroke. Roof, smoke, hands, oar, flame, path. Things they knew, things they had lost, things they still touched. The dead answered from below. The ice thudded under the boats. Pale shapes pressed upward, following the rhythm, trying to find the place where human bodies weakened between strokes. Fingers scraped the underside of hulls. Nails, or frozen remnants of nails, rasped along planks. A hand broke through a thin pane beside the second boat and seized a loose strip of cloth. The cloth had been torn from a sleeping hide. It pulled away. No one grabbed for it. That was the first small victory of the song. They let cloth go. Another hand caught a dangling spoon tied to a pack. The pack owner gasped, reached, then stopped when the next line came. Hands to oar. He put his hands back on the oar. The spoon vanished. Freya saw the choice and gave no praise. Praise would make it seem finished. She watched for the next weakness. Her cheek had dried where Soren had scratched her. The blood mark looked like a dark thread drawn from eye to jaw. Soren sat at her feet, wrapped in a stranger's shawl, lips moving around the chant without sound. When the line came about hands, he stared at his own and held them tight in his lap. Roof to smoke, bowl. Hands to oar, bowl. Flame behind, bowl. Path before, bowl. The fjord tightened ahead. The channel became a dark seam between ice slabs. The lead boat had to pass at an angle, then straighten quickly or be crushed sideways. Ulfric gestured with his chin. The rowers saw. Panic rose. Leif felt it before it broke. The lead boat entered the seam. Ice scraped both sides. The hull screamed. Hands erupted beneath the thin edges, gripping, missing, gripping again. A rower shouted as frozen fingers closed over his oar. Leif leaned forward, grabbed the shaft with him, and sang through clenched teeth. Hands to oar. Together they tore the blade free. The boat shot forward. The second followed. Freya stood in it now, too angry at fear to sit. She braced one foot on the stern board and one on a coil of rope, using her spear to shove ice away from the hull. A hand came through. She broke it. Another gripped. She broke that too. She did not look down long enough to pity any shape beneath the ice. Pity could come if they reached shore. The rear boat nearly failed. Its cracked patch caught on a jagged floe. The hull stuck. The line to the boat ahead snapped tight. People screamed. The chant staggered. Leif's voice tore on the first word. Roof. Nothing came after. His throat closed. For one terrible breath, he had no song. Then Soren spoke from Freya's boat. Small. Broken. Furious. Hands to oar. The line struck the rowers harder than any command. Leif found air. Flame behind, he rasped. The flotilla answered, not cleanly, but together. Path before. Every blade pulled. The stuck hull groaned free. The rear boat lurched through the seam, shedding splinters, taking on water, but moving. A wounded woman laughed once, a sound too sharp for joy. A man beside her began to cry while still rowing. Leif kept singing. His voice broke again and again. Each break showed the truth of the song and did not kill it. Black water opened beyond the seam. Ahead, through smoke and mist, a low shape rose from the fjord, stone, barren, dark against the white. Not safety. Nothing in the Frostlands was that generous now. But land. A place where boats might beach, where wounded could be lifted, where children could stand without water under them. Ulfric saw it and did not call it hope. He called the next stroke. Leif sang until the taste of blood filled his mouth. The rowers pulled together through black water while his broken voice kept count in roof, smoke, hands, oar, flame, and path. Freya understood this before she had words for it. Nothing over the side, she called. No hand, no cloth, no bowl, no name. If it falls, it is gone. A woman clutched the broken handle of a pail and nodded, as if Freya had asked for prayer. A boy looked at the water where the spoon had vanished earlier. He did not reach. Soren sat near Freya's boot, hollow-eyed, both hands wrapped around a piece of cloak she had let him keep. When she moved, he moved with her like a shadow that had not chosen its owner. Ulfric watched the landing. The lead boat could not strike stone too hard. Its bow had already split along an old seam. The rear boat was worse, taking on water by steady mouthfuls, patched planks shivering each time ice touched them. They had little pitch, less rope, less food now than morning had promised, less trust, less village. The islet might let them live through the night, and that was the largest mercy he dared name. Lead boat in first, he said. Bow angled. Poles ready. Wounded stay low until I call. No one stands before stone takes the keel. The rowers pulled the lead boat toward a narrow notch where the ice had cracked away from the rocks. Black water slapped the stone. Kelp lay frozen in ropes along the shore, thick and dark as drowned hair. The bow scraped once, bounced, then struck again with a grinding sound that ran through every body aboard. "Hold," Ulfric said. The rowers dug their blades against water. Men with poles shoved at rock. The boat slewed. Ice grated along its side. A pale hand broke through slush near the stern and gripped the lowest plank. Freya saw it from the second boat. "Keel hand!" she shouted. Ulfric did not turn to stare. He drove his knife down between plank and fingers. The blade struck frozen flesh with a sound like chopping root. The hand loosened enough for the boat to lurch forward. Men on the bow leapt to the rocks, slipped, caught one another, and hauled the rope around a black spur of stone. The lead boat grounded. Not safely. No landing was safe now. But it stopped moving in the water. For a moment, no one believed it. Then the children began to climb. "Slow," Ulfric snapped. "Children first, but slow." "You go now," she said. He shook his head. "You can hate me on stone." That reached him. He let Ulfric's cousin lift him from the boat. Once on the islet, he turned as if to look back toward the hole where his mother had gone under. Freya pointed at the rocks ahead. "Eyes there." He obeyed, shaking. The second boat grounded harder than the first. Its patched rib cracked with a dull report. Everyone froze. Water seeped in faster. "Out," Freya said. "Wounded next. Leave packs until bodies are clear." A man grabbed for a bundle. Freya struck his hand with the flat of her knife. "Bodies first. My blanket is in there. Then your blanket waits its turn like a wiser thing than you." He cursed her and helped lift an old woman over the side. Astrid came ashore with the empty salt bowl held against her chest. Her feet found the stone without sight. She stood just above the landing notch and listened to the boats, the water, the hands below. Wind pulled at her shawl. The bowl's rim clicked softly against her beads. "Do not make a camp too near the water," she said. "There is no camp," Ulfric answered. "There is rock. Then choose the least hungry rock." He almost smiled. It would have been the wrong shape on his face. The rear boat nearly did not make land. It came in crooked, heavy with water and fear. The chant had faded by then, and without it the rowers fell out of time again. The stern swung toward a broken shelf of ice. Pale hands rose under the shelf, waiting where the hull would catch. Freya stood knee-deep in the landing wash and shouted them in. "Left side hold. Right side pull. Again. Again. Do not look at the hands. Look at me." They looked at her because her anger was more visible than the dead. Ulfric and two others took the bowline from shore. It was a poor line, frayed in the middle, stiff with ice. If it snapped, the boat would turn broadside. Ulfric wrapped it around his forearm and pulled. The fibers bit through his sleeve. Men beside him leaned back. Their boots slipped on frozen kelp. Astrid struck the empty bowl with one knuckle, not in right, only in time. Leif tried to sing, but only a torn whisper came. Soren spoke from the rocks. "Path before." Freya lunged. Her knife came down. The hand lost 2 fingers and held anyway. She cursed and drove the blade through the wrist into the wood. Ulfric hauled. The rope burned his arm. The boat surged forward, struck stone, and stopped with a sound like a coffin lid dropped too hard. The last boat had reached land. No one cheered. Cheering belonged to returns, victories, weddings, and feasts. This was none of those. This was a body dragged from water and not yet warm. Night fell without ceremony. It came down from the clouds and up from the water. The burned homeland was no longer visible, but its smoke had entered everything. Cloaks smelled of it. Hair held it. The carved oars, stacked against stone above the landing, smelled of fire and salt water. Leif sat beside them and tried to loosen his fingers. The marks he had cut were dark with wet. Roof, wave, flame, path. He touched each in turn and felt how the meanings had changed already. A roof could burn. A wave could hide hands. A flame could save and spend. A path could be nothing more than the next place grief had not yet reached. Ulfric stood apart from the others, facing the boats. Freya came beside him. For a while neither spoke.
"You were right to cut the skiff," she said at last. "That is not the same as being clean."
"I did not offer clean." "No, tomorrow they will need rules," Freya said. Ulfric looked at her. "Not comfort," she said. "Rules, for bodies, for ropes, for what may be carried, for names, for what is cut loose when hands rise." "The salt right," Astrid said from behind them. Freya turned. "You hear everything. I hear what stands too close to death." Ulfric looked toward the dark water. "A right will not save us." "No," Astrid said, "but law may keep grief from opening every door." Then the last boat moved. It should not have moved. It lay grounded on stone with its bow tilted upward and its stern barely kissing the black wash. No wave strong enough had struck it. No one was aboard. Yet the hull shuddered once. Freya had her knife out before the sound finished. Ulfric raised a hand. No one came closer. Leif stood slowly, the carved oar in both hands like a staff. Astrid turned her blindfolded face toward the keel. The boat shuddered again. A crack of ice broke beneath it. Freya stepped down the rocks, slow now, each boot finding ground before the next moved. Ulfric followed. Leif came behind them until Astrid caught his sleeve. "Do not spend your throat on this," she said. "I have no throat left." "Then keep your silence useful." Freya crouched near the stern. The last light had nearly gone, but snow held enough grey to show the underside of the boat where it rested against the ice shelf. At first she saw only shadow, wet plank, and frozen kelp. Then the shadow had fingers, not one hand, many. They were lopped beneath the keel, frozen into place where water had sealed around them. Pale fingers curled around wood from below. Some were whole, some broken, some small enough to stop the breath in her chest. They did not claw now. They did not reach. They gripped with the patience of anchors. Ulfric knelt beside her. The keel creaked. The boat had reached land, but the dead had not let go. Freya looked at the frozen hands gripping the keel and understood that the fjord had not ended its pursuit. It had only changed its hold. Thank you for listening. This chapter ends here, but the story continues. Follow the series for new chapters, and when you are ready, explore the other worlds and storylines waiting beyond this one. If you enjoyed this episode, leaving a like or a comment helps more listeners find the story.